So let's start. Welcome to the StratKit Baltic Sea Region online conference, Sustainability in Public Procurement and Catering Services. I'm Piotr Masłowski, I'm Deputy Mayor of Rybnik, and I'm very glad that the Rybnik, a city that is associated rather with the heavy industry, is in Poland the leader of the changes related to healthy and balanced nutrition. On the other hand, I'm sad that it's not been possible to carry out this even in a traditional form, because of this all of interaction we could have if we will meet just in a normal way. And unfortunately, you will not visit Rybnik. And now I give a floor to the Renata Kaźmierczak from the Warsaw University of Life Sciences.
Thank you very much, Piotr. My name is Renata Kaźmierczak. Welcome everyone. Together with my colleagues, Professor Ewa Rębiałkowska and Rita Góralska-Walczak from Warsaw University of Life Sciences, which is co-organizer of this conference. We are really happy to welcome you at the conference about sustainability in public procurement and catering services. We are very happy to organize this conference for you and for us to discuss the problems related to the best solutions for the public procurement and catering services in Baltic countries. We would like to focus on the green public procurement, food waste, and also organic food as a very important part of our healthy everyday diet. So we are really happy to start this conference and to invite many prestigious colleagues to present their presentations and all of you to discuss the presented topics. We wish you a very nice conference, very nice time together. At the beginning, before we start the thematic sessions, I am very pleased to briefly introduce the StratKit project to present you to our main goals and activities. Now I should share screen, but I'm not allowed for this. Could you please, Adrian, one more? And the full title of the StratKit project is the Innovative Strategies for Public Catering Sustainability Toolkit across Baltic Sea region. StratKit project lasts from the beginning of 2019 to the end of 2021. Is financed by Interreg Baltic Sea region program. Our lead partner is University of Helsinki from Finland. To make procurement of public catering services more sustainable in the Baltic Sea region, 13 project partners work together in the project. We have also 10 associated partners from the Baltic Sea region. Partners come from the public administrations, catering services, research and consulting work. On the right, you can see a map when we highlighted 6 project countries. There are Finland, Estonia, Russia, Denmark, Germany, and Poland. Our total budget is around 2 million euros. Here you can see the names of all 13 project partner institutions. They are University of Helsinki, Stockholm, Environment Institute Tallinn Center, Agrarter, IFAU Institute for Food Studies and Agro-Industrial Development, Municipality of Aarhus, Municipality of Rybnik, Tallinn City Government, Finnish Professional Catering Association, Baltic Restaurants Estonia, Central Denmark EU Office, the Herzen State Pedagogical University of Russia, a Council of Municipalities of St. Petersburg, and finally, Warsaw University of Life Sciences. StratKit partnership is based on the triple helix structure, including university, industry, and government, which together cooperate both on national and transnational level. Thanks to networking, it is possible exchange of specific knowledge and best practices and sustainable solutions, in particular partner countries, and international, national, regional, and local cooperation between such partners. By implementing the project, we want to develop healthier and increasingly sustainable public catering system in the Baltic Sea region. We achieve this by taking into account the various aspects of sustainability like health and well-being, food safety and supply, biodiversity, resource efficiency, climate change, and other environmental aspects and impacts. Our tasks in the project include several actions. Firstly, we did mapping of the real situation in public procurement and catering service in 6 project countries by collecting information, highlighting both the problems and the best practices, identifying legal and political framework, identifying relevant stakeholders and their focus segments. Next, on the basis of mapping, we build sustainable models and then pilot different models in all partner countries. Our task is also setting up an international public procurement and catering services network and dissemination of results, of course. So far, we have identified some interesting practices, new developments, and novel initiatives. Among practices can be mentioned aligning with nutritional recommendation when designing menus, renouncing agrochemicals by procurement of organic food, avoiding plastic packaging, minimizing food waste across the manufacturing, including procurement and kitchen operations, minimizing plate waste by consumer communication, on-site selling of leftover meals at lower prices. Among new developments, there are such solutions like increasing energy efficiency of the manufacturing kitchens by reconstruction, new methods such as cold combination, solar panels, ergonomics, but cutting meat and dairy consumption is one of the novel initiatives, as well as increasing consumption of undervalued local fish stocks, educating and inspiring consumers to consume meals with legumes, co-creating new vegetarian and vegan recipes with customers, and serving meals without rice. In the project, we constantly build online platform, and thanks to that, many of procurers and caterers, policymakers, NGOs, small, medium enterprises, and other actors deal with improving the sustainability of public catering across Baltic Sea region, will be able to be in touch with each other and exchanging experiences and developing strategies. If the organization is working in the same field, can become part of this network and join. It is a very promising platform that we believe will improve communication between stakeholders in a whole Baltic Sea region. Here you can see contact, my detailed contact, and thank you very much for your attention. Now we go further. according to the program, I would like to welcome very warmly and introduce our special guest from Finland, Sirpa Pietikäinen, who is Finnish member of the European Parliament, representing the European People's Party in European Parliament since 2008. Earlier Minister of Environment and member of the Finnish Parliament. Among her many duties at European Parliament, she is a member of the Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee and the Environment and Public Health Committee. She is currently actively working towards more sustainable finance within EU. She was a member of the high-level European Resource Efficiency Platform and the European Parliament's reporter for the report on resource efficiency, moving towards a circular economy. She has authored various articles on circular economy. Sirpa Pietikäinen will present us very interesting topic, which is closely related to the conference topic and our project. The title of her presentation is How Taxonomy Can Help Greening Public Procurement. So, Sirpa, we welcome, and please start your presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I'm very delighted to have the opportunity to talk to you, because I think that the work what you are doing in the sustainable food and procurement is excellent, and it's of utmost importance. And I'm going to introduce a couple of aspects of it quite soon. And first of all, if we think of the importance of the food when we look the whole impact on the resource efficiency and on climate change and biodiversity, it's about 1/3. And then the public procurement is about 20% of the GDP in European area. So combining these two things, we really could make the change. And the question is how to put it concretely. Okay, and the first slide. The question is, let's start with just trying to see if I can change these slides myself. Seems it does not. Yes, thank you. Let's first talk about what we are trying to achieve when we are talking about good food. In the European Union, we are talking about this farm to fork concept, and you probably are very well aware of the point of the work of the IPES in international level. So it's all over the place when we are talking about sustainable food. And I think it's very important to see that it needs to happen a bit like you need to put all the ingredients of the recipe simultaneously in the pot when you make a fish soup. This is a bit the same thing. You just can't take separately the safety or the environmental impact or workers' rights, because then you do not get the whole good impact. You need to take the whole big picture, what is good and fair food. First of all, of course, it needs to be safe, that you do not get any food poisoning or harmful substances or toxic compoundments of them. And that's why we've had have the food regulation and others there. It needs to be healthy and nutritious for our bodies. And that's why we have the nutritional recommendations. We all know once in a while a chocolate or a candy doesn't do that much of a harm, but the daily basis diet should be based on a lot of vegetables, fish, good oils, not too excessive on sugars or bad fats or excessive amounts of salts and so on. It needs to be ecological because, as said, this is 1/3 and the easiest impact what we can make concerning the climate change. Then the question is what ecological means. It means the climate change. It means the biodiversity. It means the resource efficiency. And I know that you have the topic separately. It means that you should not have the food waste. And this is then not only the food waste on the last side, on the consumer or on the table. It is throughout the production chain. It means it need to have a positive and not at least a negative impact on the healthiness and well-being of the soils, and not the negative impacts on chemicalization, and that, as you know, goes to the debates of pesticides and other harmful substances. So that itself has quite a lot of different elements. It needs to be ethical too. And that means the domestic workers, it means the farmers, it means the people who provide the food for us. For fair work, they need to have a fair compensation. And otherwise we can't actually protect the workers, be it in our butcheries, be it in our farms when they are there, they're working, or then that matter when we look in third countries, in Mercosur, in Brazil, in many African countries, how the workers or the farmers are doing there. It needs to be fair and ethical also on the point of view of the animals. I usually tend to say that you would need to be able to look on the eye on that one you put on your plate because they sacrifice their lives and lives for us. And that means that you need to have a decent conditions and decent treatment of the animals. And for all of that, you need to have the information, what happens in the food chain, because you can't have the information of the bits and pieces that are coming from various parts of the world if you do not have the tracking and tracing methodologies. And it needs to be affordable, because the good food, fair food, does not mean that it is elitistic process. It is something that everybody should be able to buy and to eat. And of course, it will need to be good, because no one else wants to eat bad tasting food. Okay, then we go to the next slide. What do we then know about what is the good food? How to measure it? And what is interesting is that actually, if you look at the resource footprint, water use, land use, biodiversity impact, social indicators, animal welfare, and all these, it goes in a line, and actually it goes in a line with the health matters too. If you have too much of a processed red meat, it is not so good for your health. It is not good for any of these impacts on the nature or biodiversity or the climate. And then again, if you take these kind of extremes, if you eat locally produced vegetables, seasonal vegetables, and preferably organic, and you add there mainly the natural fishes from lakes and seas, you are pretty much close, and added with good oils, you are pretty much close what is good for your health, and what is good for the producers, and what is good for the environment also. And then if you eat less meat, then when you buy meat, you can afford to buy better meat from the perspective of environmentalists or workers. And so actually these all measures go hand in hand. And what we need is a proper measurement, and I'm going to come back on that in a minute. But then let's tackle another point, and that is on the next slide. And that is the public procurement. The public procurement, as said, is about all in all, almost 20%. Here we have the 2017 figure of the EU GDP. It's worth over 2 trillion euros. And if we could guide this amount to go to environmentally sustainable procurement, it would make the big difference. And we have to remember that in this public procurement regulation, you have the meat principle. And that means that you need to procure most economically advantaged tender. And that is not only the price, and this is quite often misinterpreted. It is the costs, and it is the best quality price ratio that needs to be used. So it is not buying the cheapest and the poorest quality. And actually then you should set the criteria of what are the social impacts, what are the economic impacts, what are the environmental impacts, animal welfare impacts of your procurement. And what I have proposed is that actually we should have in regulation, but at this moment when you do not have it in regulation, you could have it in voluntarily, is comply or explain model. This means that always when you procure, and now we are talking about then of course food, you would say that you go to sustainable food, or then you explain why you can't do it. Well, a bit of a wasabi is not worth going through such a big effort of looking the environmental footprint, or we are such a procuring so small amount, or we are so small unit that we do not have the tools, the capability, or anything to do anything. So you can always explain, but it should be on place and compulsory to look first to have the best sustainability public procurement. Then the second one is that quite often you should have the innovative, not only criteria, but innovative procurement procedure, what you know is in the public procurement regulation. What that means is that you sit together with the producers. It is this pre-negotiation phase. And you say that we are going to procure the food, let's say, for example, for our schools and for our elderly care centers or our offices or whatever within the next 2 or 3 years. And we would prefer to have sustainable, locally produced. No, you can't have the locally only as a criteria, but you can use it via the climate and economic impact. So we would need to have fresh, climate friendly, environmental friendly, if possible, organic, seasonal vegetables that are fresh and locally near produced fish. And then how you can actually bring the local aspect, because that is so important in the food, is on information requirements and on ecological footprint. And then actually you create a level playing field with the, let's say with Brazilian broilers or very complex products that are imported from the third countries, because there you might not get the whole information, and the life cycle impact might and quite often is the bigger. And then when you have this discussion, you give the chance for local producers to come up with that kind of an innovative procurement offer, where they say that, look, with this kind of a set, we can produce with cheaper days and more expensive days. With this kind of a combination, the vegetables, the finalized products, if that is needed, this kind of a diets and this kind of menus in these days. And so when this is in this is a auction, inverted auction, you could actually ask the price, and they could sort of come up then how they can sort of stay with beyond certain price levels, for example. And what is good in innovative procurement procedures is that you can change them throughout the procurement procedure. You are not stick with the fixed criteria and procurement for the whole time. Okay, then the next slide. Then the green public procurement is essential part of this EU's economic recovery, and we should, by this green public procurement, support the transition of our economies to be more sustainable ones. And this should serve as a part of this kind of a transition plan that all of our economies and organizations should have. And the transition plan means that kind of a thinking, how are we going to be sustainable in 2030 or 2035 or 2040? Then these compulsory green public procurement procedures would be needed. They are on the way on the proposal in the Commission, but we do not know whether we are going to have any proposals from there or not. Then the next slide. And now I'm getting to the taxonomy. And I do know that in many places where actually the local municipalities or institutions would like to make green public procurement, they do not do it because they do not have the criteria. They are hesitant about whether they are going to sue for using this kind of a biased criteria, and they are afraid that the processes get too complex. And there the taxonomy could help. And okay, what is taxonomy? We have a huge project in the EU called Sustainable Finance. And I'm not going to go through this because this is not actually very relevant to you, but so that you know what is the framework where the taxonomy is set on. The taxonomy is the standards what are to be called green and sustainable and what are not to be considered to be sustainable. That is the things causing the significant harm. And then on the next slide, and now we are getting on the taxonomy. What the taxonomy is? It is a tool to help investors, companies, issuers, project promoters, public procurers to navigate the transition towards the low carbon, resilient and resources efficient economy. And there, what we are actually having is to have the proposals coming first as delegated acts that actually is out the last week, and it is under negotiation and going to be enforced from the 1st of 22. What are the criteria to be called green and sustainable on climate change mitigation and adaptation? So it sets the border values on this climate friendliness, and then on the other end it sets the criteria what would be significant harm that actually would touch the food sector that much, but it would be, for example, the solid fossil fuels that are considered to be significant harm. And then pretty soon, on the beginning of 23, we are going to have the rest of the taxonomy criteria, because like in food, you have the different aspects. Also, in the environmental sector, you have the different aspects, and you shouldn't look at the climate only. You have the sustainable use and protection of water and marine resources. You have the whole transition to circular economy with 1/10 of the resources. Well, that is a bit too ambitious on the food side, but as in whole, that is the target. It is the pollution prevention and control, and it is the protection and restoration of a biodiversity of ecosystems. Then the next slide. There's a bit more clarification of these taxonomy goals. There you can have the you can see the environmental goals, and that there you have the three categories. One is totally green, that you define that this is perfect, this is green. That could be, for example, the locally produced organic seasonal vegetables. Then it is the enabling. In the solar panel is used to be an example of the enabling. It itself is not very green, the solar panel as such, but you need it to produce the solar sector. I don't think that you have that much of an enabling categories in the food sector. And then you have those ones that are supporting the transition, like we have the debate whether the gas would be this kind of a transition supporting investment in some other categories. The supporting transition could be because of the costs if one would procure from third countries with cheap price in certain categories, certain vegetables, for example. I mentioned to you already the do no significant harm principle. So it is looking not only what is green, what is sustainable, what is good, but to look also the other end, what you should definitely avoid. What is, for example, the way and method of producing meat in certain areas that you definitely don't want to have on your menus. And there, for example, sorry to raise it, it is the Brazilian broiler, or the meat where you cut down the Amazon to produce GMO soya to feed up the animals in big production sites. You are using chemicals and quite often quite a number of pesticides in broilers to have the impact on not having any problems with extra harm on the broilers or the extra pests there, and lot of problems. So this probably would go, on my opinion, on that category. And then, of course, you would need to take into account in the do no significant harm the human rights and labor protection agreements and principles, how you treat the people in the process. For that, you need indicators and life cycle analysis. As said, it is not only how it tastes and whether you can find some pesticides on that bit of a chicken or a broiler that you are eating, but what is the whole life cycle and how to measure it, and how can you create the proof on your procurement so that it is not haphazard and that you have a different kind of a set of indicators and procedures in one city and one institution, and then on the next door it is totally different, because then you lose a lot of the effectiveness, and you might also be unfair towards some of the companies and producers. Then the next slide on this is this kind of a point of a consideration, because we always would need to see, because there are a lot of issues, as said, biodiversity, it is the water consumption, it is the climate, and so on. You can't have just sort of a dichotomy, bad and good. You have the high performers, what are the excellent, then you have a lot of diets that is in between, and then you have this significant harm, the end you wouldn't want to touch. Then the next one. And the next one sort of describes the point, and that is the taxonomy sets the criteria and screening criteria and thresholds. What is sustainable, and then the DNS is what is not sustainable. We would need to have a common method to calculate the impact, and that is the life cycle assessment and the indicators that are underway on developing, as I mentioned. And then the problem is where to get the information. And the long-term dream is that we would have, like we have a nutritional value information centers, and you can read it in the package, that you would have in certain categories this information about the sustainability also, with this kind of a labeling or easy access portal where you could say, okay, if I buy a cabbage or if I buy this kind of a soup, what is approximately the CO2 footprint and what is the biodiversity impact or all the other ESG criteria. Then what to measure, you can see here the main points under the line that are pretty much the same that goes, of course, in the taxonomy in general and in the environmental impact on the food. And what I would like to suggest to you is that you would take the taxonomy as a basis on these upcoming years and its framework about the screening criteria. With this excellent exercise which you have, and hopefully a bit of the Commission's resources, because I do know that they have the interest to support this kind of initiatives, you would start creating this kind of a data platform where I referred to. What is the CO2 footprint of this chicken and this broiler? How do you measure the CO2 or biodiversity of the carrot? Or what is the calculation method to see the impact of toxicity on the soil, for example? And as you know, and I know a lot of you in the different connections, the information is out there. What we would need now is to make this kind of easily accessible modeling, how you measure it concretely based on this taxonomy, and how the public procurer could take this measurement easily, and maybe the categorizations there to choose from the offerings the better, environmentally better and more sustainable choices. So unfortunately, I didn't have very precise prescription, the recipe of the soup, but this is at least how it should be done. And I thank you for your great efforts and wish that we can continue working together to create that kind of a database and modeling on sustainable food in public procurement. Thank you.